You're on the internet once again. You wondered how monkeys evolved to do backflips, and you end up researching about monkey mobility and locomotion. This isn't the first rabbit hole you went down. YouTube, with its never-ending content cycle, can provide you with the most personalized, interesting info to you on any topic. You have intricate knowledge on the Balkan Wars now, on how to make your own cheese wheels. You know not to go in still water in abandoned places. It seems like there's an answer for everything now. I basically know everything about this world, at least scientifically. The instant you uttered those words, you hear a knock on your door. You open it, but no one was there. It couldn't have been a prank because it came from inside your house. There's an intruder in your home. You grab your 12-gauge shotgun and get ready to rip and tear. You see a big man with a hat standing in the corner. He almost seems to be flat. It doesn't matter, because you blast him with your shotgun on sight. He just disappears into thin air. What in the fuck? Before you're able to start uttering the most vile and offensive words at the intruder, you hear your brother's voice coming from the window. The problem is your brother has been on an Arctic expedition for weeks now, so you blast another shot at the window. Something screeches and scurries away. What is happening? In the frenzy, you look out the window to see where that thing that pretended to be your brother left, but then you see Bigfoot strolling across your backyard. He's yelling and smashing rocks against your fence, so you keep blasting, until he manifests a portal out of nowhere and leaves this plane of existence. He seems to have disabled all of your cameras as well. The next day, all you're left with is a damaged fence, broken window, and bullet holes in your walls. Seems like life still has its own mysteries. The internet has caused a renaissance of knowledge for the average person. Information that only a scholar used to be able to access is now available for free, at any time at the reach of your fingertips. And with the Renaissance, there was this general feeling that everything that had to be discovered was discovered through science, and people wanted to see something new, something exciting, and what would be more perfect to fill that role than mythical beasts, cryptids, and magical beings? Because people do desire a sense of magic and wonder in their lives that has been largely taken away from them by the knowledge machines, so they indulge in these mystical stories and folktales, just like in the olden days. Mythical beasts back in the day were often representations of various ideas and fears, like most famously, the dragon, a fire-spitting, village-destroying flying reptile, was a great allegory for the never-ending struggle to live and the gruesomeness of everyday life. Or Chinese dragons that would be able to grant wisdom and give you blessings. They were the kings of the sky and full of magic. Dragons can indeed symbolize strength, wisdom, good fortune, and knowledge as well. Dragons are shared all over the world, and their frequent appearance in folklore makes it seem like they were real. And some might say they were. So like the dragons back in the day, I picked out 3 mythical beings that have been very prevalent in modern internet folklore, to find out more about their origins and lore. Each one of them has a story that describes their general characteristics, so listen closely as we dive into the fears of modern society. It's a cold, rainy day. Thunder bellows from all cardinal directions as you lay in your bed sick. You ate a chocolate bar from Disney World that specifically stated it contained no nuts, but it was all one big fat lie. As you lay there, with hives all over your body, watery eyes, and itchy all over, you can only think about how to end this miserable state faster. So you rummage through your medicine cabinet and find it. Benadryl, or more accurately, diphenhydramine, the perfect substance to treat your symptoms. It's an antihistamine after all. You're extremely eager to end your terrible allergy symptoms, so you quickly open the pill container. I want this to be over now. Maybe if I take a bunch of those pills, the effects will kick in harder and faster. After all, I don't think I can scratch my itchy skin any further without damaging it. I really need it to end. So in your haste, you take a handful of pills and shove them down your throat. You lay back down in your bed, waiting for the effects to kick in, until you see a big spider on your wall. You hate spiders, so you grab your slipper to quickly dispose of it, but it's gone. I guess it must have ran away. Now paranoid of the live spider in your room, you lay back down again, now armed with a slipper. You rest your eyes a bit, but when you open them again, you see a colony of spiders all over the walls. The slipper won't save you now. They're all crawling and undulating. You must be having a nightmare. You try to slap yourself awake, but no matter what you do, you see the spiders everywhere, and you can't seem to wake up. In your frenzy to wake up, you catch a glimpse of a dark shadow in your room. It wasn't supposed to be there. There was nothing that could cast a shadow there. The spiders became less of a concern, as now there might be an intruder in your house. You look closer and see the outline of a big man standing in the corner. He seems to be wearing some sort of big hat, and while you can't make out his face, you know he's staring at you. He looks more like a living shadow than a person. All of your doors and windows were locked. How did he make it through? The Hat Man's gaze never breaks and stares right into your soul. Every time you blink, he seems to be closing the distance. With his intentions unclear, you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. You yell at him to identify himself, to get out of your house, to leave you alone. Your cries for help fall on deaf ears. His absolute indifference to your pain and struggle makes you think he has malicious intentions. He must have. Why else would he be staring you down, watching you go crazy from the spiders all around you? Oh god, the spiders! They're on your skin! They're crawling all over you! Your mouth is as dry as a desert. You try not to scream to keep them from crawling into your mouth. As you hold in your cries of agony, you claw at your skin trying to get them off, rolling around. All the while the Hat Man is now at arm's length. It looks like the man is about to speak to you. Is this death himself? Has he come to take your soul? Have you been a bad person and perished from the Disney chocolate and went to hell? You think this is the end. This is hell, and this is all your fault. But then you start to come back to your senses. Your skin has claw marks all over you. Your bed is a mess, and your mouth is still impossibly dry. That wasn't hell you entered, but it might as well have been. It was a Benadryl-induced trip, because not only is diphenhydramine an antihistamine, it is a deliriant. This was an example of how people commonly first meet the Hat Man. It's by getting high off of Benadryl and seeing him while you're tripping. The spiders on the walls are also an actual hallucination people see when on Benadryl. And let me tell you, a diphenhydramine-induced trip is an absolute nightmare, and using it too often can give you psychosis. If you want to hear more Benadryl trip stories, go to r/DPH. They get even more insane than this, but a very notable figure that has been reported during these trips independently is the Hat Man. Usually a tall humanoid shadow wearing a hat, this thing will stare at you with unknown intentions, and sometimes even growl at you, or whisper mean things. We don't know what the Hat Man is. He could be an animal that looks like a person wearing a hat. He could be some sort of demon, or worse, he could be a tax collector. While people often see the Hat Man through a diphenhydramine trip, there are also reports of his appearance made by regular people, not tripping balls. The appearance remains the same though. The Hat Man is also a common sleep paralysis demon, so the Hat Man clearly has some sort of connection to altered states of consciousness. The reports of the Hat Man vary, with some people claiming he's an alien, while others believe he's from a different dimension. But the best categorization I've seen of him is his description as a shadow person. So a shadow person is a cryptid type that is defined by very clear characteristics, unlike some cryptids like Bigfoot. Shadow people are humanoid shadows that appear in places where no shadow should be cast. They can move on their own and disappear at will. Usually shadow people just stare at their witness before quickly disappearing into nothingness again. Sometimes they will reach out to a person, or even touch them. Their touch is reported to be ice cold, and the area of where the shadow person resided is usually cold as well, an all-around chilling experience, as some might say. So based on the Hat Man's general perception and characteristics, I think he is a shadow person, and the reason he is so famous among shadow people is his distinct, iconic hat. The intentions of shadow people are unknown. Some of them act maliciously, to scare an unsuspecting person, while others can warn someone from impending doom with their presence. I personally have actually seen shadow people. Usually they just peek at me, and or others around me, and I have actually seen a shadow person with another witness present. But the most chilling encounter happened to me a couple of months ago. I was walking back to my room after a late night visit to the John, and while I was in a hallway, I felt something staring at me. I thought it was my cat, because I could vaguely see a small shadow where I felt the presence emanate from, so I get closer to it, and shine a light on it. The instant the light hit the figure, I could see that it was a shadow, as black as Vanta Black, more of a complete absence of light in the form of a very small person peeking at me from behind the door. It was at the end of the hallway. It had small, doll-like hands gripping the door, and I remember thinking afterwards how annoying it is that all spirits peek around the corner in the same creepy way every time. Like, can't they peek like a regular person? Anyway, it darted back behind the door extremely quickly, and I saw the movement very clearly with my own two eyes. After this encounter, I had extreme goosebumps out of nowhere, even though I wasn't scared. I was curious about what that was, but nevertheless, there have only been a few moments in my life where my goosebumps were this strong. It was like listening to Bohemian Rhapsody for the first time. The area around the sighting wasn't cold either, which was odd, because usually shadow people leave behind cold, but I went back to my room, wrote about this encounter so I wouldn't think I'm crazy or had a bad dream, and promptly went to sleep. It didn't help that I saw the shadow of a childlike figure sneaking around like a cartoon bank robber in the same spot. No kidding. The thing is, the figure I saw previously was a lot bigger than the other one, and it moved much slower, and more clumsily. So I just thought I was sleep deprived and went back to bed. The shadow doll was extremely close to me, like a meter away, and I was wide awake at this time, and the goosebumps were something I've never really experienced before with these encounters. Because I am not afraid of hallucinations. I have them, but they are very rare, and the visual ones only happen after I have just woken up, and I always know it's a hallucination. I was in the toilet fighting for my life, so that's the reason I was completely awake by the time I felt the figure staring at me. I wasn't sick, it was just indigestion. In conclusion, I'm very sure I actually saw a shadow person up close with my own eyes and it reacted to my light. So of course, I might be biased when it comes to shadow people because I have seen some with my own eyes with multiple witnesses present, but I have never seen the Hat Man. The common sleep paralysis demon and trip supervisor is incredibly mysterious. Nobody really knows where he first came from. I personally believe it came from a very common spirit called Mara, Mare, or the Hag. A spirit that sits on your chest while you're sleeping and gives you nightmares. This spirit has many names in many different cultures, so the Hat Man could just be another variant of it, or he could be a sort of boogeyman that feeds off of your fear. This is also why he is present in a lot of bad trips from psychedelic substances, as the fear you experience during them is immense and would be a prime food source for the Hat Man. He never really does much besides stand there and stare at you, but doesn't that sound familiar? He watches you constantly, he is omnipotent, and worst of all, nobody knows what he is, what he does, and what his intentions are. The average internet stranger is someone who constantly watches you. You don't know them, you don't know what they want, but you can feel their judgmental gaze. While both the dragon and the Hat Man had some of their origins based on allegedly real encounters, their symbolism remains a heavy indicator of the current zeitgeist. Also, bug off Germans, I know that it's pronounced Zeitgeist, so sue me. People are very afraid of being constantly watched by dark unknown humanoids, and I think the fear of the ever so judgmental and watching internet has combined itself into the figure we now know as the Hat Man. The hat is also symbolic of a private investigator, another person who has been paid to watch you at all hours of the day, watching you even at your lowest moments, knowing that all of your nightmares are always being judged and observed. That is the essence of the Hat Man. Well, that was tough. You take a walk through the woods for a nice, relaxing stroll. You even went to a national park because you really needed to de-stress. And what could be better than acres of beautiful landscapes and forest? The birds are chirping, the cicadas are whirring around, you see two butterflies seemingly play catch with each other, and life is good. You continue your hike, but then you notice something is weird. You start to smell something disgusting, like rancid, rotten meat. It's probably just some decaying animal left in the sun, but you don't see it anywhere. The smell isn't just flesh, it also has undertones of copper? Did you just find someone's copper stash? The smell was absolutely overpowering, so you hastened your step to avoid it, and hearing your own footsteps echo through the woods made you realize everything went quiet. No more chirping, buzzing, or howling. Radio silence. The silence is followed by a bitter cold that chills you to your bones. But it's been warm outside all day. This doesn't make any sense. You've never heard the forest this quiet before. Something is deeply wrong here. You start jogging. But then you trip a little, and in the absolute silence, you notice something was using the sound of your footsteps to cover its own. It was really good at it, until you tripped. Something was following you. You look around you, but you still can't see anything. It's probably a mountain lion stalking you, so you pull out your bear spray and try to sneak away from the footsteps. Help! Help! Out of nowhere, you hear an unmistakable call for help coming from behind the trees, but something was odd about it. The calls for help sounded more like a messed up audio recording than an actual person. I'm armed and dangerous, you say to scare off the unwelcome stranger with the awful stench. The silence is back. But then you see a human hand from behind a tree. In fact, a whole person appears from behind it. The man opens his mouth and says, "Hello there, can you help me? I'm lost." He waves at you, or at least you think it was supposed to be a wave, because his arm is just twitching from side to side. "Please, come closer. I can't hear you. Over there." The man had no backpack, no camping equipment, no flashlight, nothing. His clothes didn't even look warm from being lost in the forest. You know something is up. That man is no man. He isn't human, or if he ever was one, he stopped being one long ago. You see him shift into a different form, a mix between a deer and a man. Its stature is giant, and its movement impossibly fast. "You have met a terrible fate." That is the most basic version of pretty much every Skinwalker story you hear on the internet. A rancid, copper-like smell, the eerie silence, the shape-shifting, and the uncanny valley behavior. Those are all the symptoms of a Skinwalker, but where did that even come from? So, the original idea for the Skinwalker allegedly came from a creature known as the Wendigo in Native American culture, specifically Navajo, although other tribes have their own names for these things. The interesting thing is that the Native American description of the so-called Skinwalker, or Wendigo, is very different. So, first of all, there are two different kinds of myths that the Skinwalker just mashed together. One of them is a creature so taboo you can't even say their name, the Yinaldlushi, or he who walks in the skin. In their folklore, these beasts are usually shamans who have turned to the dark side, as an evil magic, and have committed one of the worst crimes in their society, cannibalism. There is even a phenomena called Wendigo psychosis, which is classified as a culture-bound syndrome that affects natives, and it makes them go insane after believing to have committed a great crime such as eating human meat. Or it can happen at seemingly random times, giving you an intense craving for human flesh and fear of becoming a cannibal. I'm sorry, but a culture-bound mental illness just sounds like Western scientists trying to describe an evil spirit. Like, I know that there are other cultures who have culture-bound syndrome, but from an outside perspective, it looks really sus. Back to the Skinwalkers. So the evil shaman uses different animal hides and even human skin to pull it over their body to be able to shapeshift into them. Then there's the Wendigo, an evil spirit that possesses you after you have consumed human flesh. It will give you an insatiable feeling of hunger, desire to eat people, and or end their life in general. In some native stories, the Wendigo is described as a giant humanoid with a heart of ice, whose approach is signaled by a foul stench or a sudden chill. So that's where the iconic stench came from. Notice how I said nothing about a deer skull face in either one of them. This is a mainstream media invention. In no stories about the Skinwalker or the Wendigo does it look like that in its natural form. Remember, it can shapeshift as well, so most witnesses would probably never see its true form or live to tell the tale. But they were mostly described as humanoid and not deer-like. A more accurate description of the physical appearance of a Wendigo would be an emaciated, rotting and decaying human body, with eyes sunken into its skull, extremely pale skin, and it can be as tall as a regular person or giant. So it's closer to a zombie more than anything. The spirit of the Wendigo is supposed to represent the feeling of starvation, especially during winter, and what it could do to a person, an insatiable hunger that will make you commit unspeakable acts. It also symbolizes greed and overindulgence, never having enough. The general idea of a Skinwalker is an amalgamation of different native beliefs and internet ideas combined to make the scariest cryptid possible, a shapeshifter who wants to eat you, or in some stories, turn you into one of them. I think Skinwalkers are such a popular cryptid because they perfectly explore the theme of the uncanny valley, something that looks human, but isn't quite there. Skinwalkers can also pretend to be your loved ones to lure you to them, or to be led into your home. So to think that there's an intelligent hunter out there who is a master of all things mimicry, it makes people terrified. I think shapeshifting is such a prevalent fear in the modern world because you can never really trust people for who they are. Imagine it turns out your mom, who you thought was loving and caring, suddenly gives you the cold shoulder because she thinks you're gay based on your music taste. Or witnessing your dad become a literal monster after getting drunk. This whole switch up in personality can be felt on a primal level, and I believe a lot of people relate to the experience of seeing someone you care about turn into a monster. The Native American versions of these shamans and evil spirits are not cryptids, but the internet turned them into one beast. Still, there are some genuine chilling reports of real shapeshifters out there all over the internet, although not all shapeshifters can immediately be classified as a Wendigo or a Skinwalker. A mimic is a disembodied voice that mimics the voice of your loved ones. Usually, it's just being mischievous, but it can also lure away children deeper into the forest by mimicking the voice of a loved one. The not deer is what it sounds like. A predator that looks like a deer, but can't sprint and walk on two legs, has human teeth or other human features, and it can even have a fully human face. The not deer are very creepy, and usually try to blend in with regular deer, but people who have reported seeing one can tell by their eyes alone that this was not a deer. They are also much less afraid of humans and will stare at you from a distance before running off on their hind legs or standing up, exposing their human-like torso. They can also have other odd features such as extra joints, extra eyes, unusually long legs, front-facing eyes, unusually long or broken neck, unusual motion, and backwards heads or legs. Usually with sightings of not deer, it's just a case of chronic wasting disease, making the deer act weird. But you can clearly see how the writers of internet skinwalker stories took inspiration from multiple myths to create the skinwalker as we know it today. So it really is a combination of different creepy crawlies put into one. The combination of humans with different animals has been around for millennia, and the internet seems to have an obsession with humanoid entities, even if it's more ape than human. You're in American forest land once again, and you're smoking just a little bit of weed. You're having a great time chilling, until you see a Bigfoot appear out of a portal. You try to capture it on camera, but the best you can do is grab your Nintendo 3DS and use the camera to capture pixel art of the elusive ape. It seems to just be walking in the great American forest until another portal appears. It smiles at you, knowing no one will ever believe what you saw. As it goes back to the fourth dimension, the great ape of North America remains a mystery. So Bigfoot is probably the most iconic cryptid of all time, and at a glance, it seems very simple. A great ape in North America that isn't supposed to be there, since the only big apes that made it to the continent and survived were Homo sapiens sapiens. Why, that's what the mainstream narrative wants you to believe. It has been claimed to be the missing link in our evolution, a time traveler, a fourth-dimensional being, a spirit, an alien. Every possible paranormal thing that can exist in theory has been applied to Bigfoot. But where does the myth of Bigfoot even come from? The Native Americans, once again, although their stories differ from what is commonly attributed to Bigfoot on the internet. You might have heard of the term Sasquatch, and it comes from the Salish word Saskets, which means something like wild man or hairy man. There are many more native tribes that have their own word for it, like the Choctaw call it Champe, the Chinook call it Skookum, and the Navajo call it Bikeh-Nitsa. I'm terribly sorry for butchering these names, but in essence, they all refer to some 6 to 15 feet tall hairy being that lives in the wilderness and has big freaky feet. And there are many stories about these wild men. The tribes often claim that they have been living in the land for much longer than even the natives. They can be aggressive and attack the tribes, or they can even be friendly to them. I've listened to a lot of Native American Bigfoot stories, and in most of them, they're characterized as human-like, apish beings that want to be left alone in the forest, and they have a sort of special connection to the land they live in. Bigfoot reports are not uncommon in the US, and they are also occasionally sighted in Canada, so you'd think that eventually someone would film these huge ape-like creatures. I mean seriously, I have seen high-quality footage of high-speed UFOs flying through the sky in impossible ways, but a big clunky ape manages to evade all trail cams, cameras, and wildlife photographers. The most famous recording we have of Bigfoot are the Patterson-Gimlin tapes that you have probably seen 100 times by now, of an allegedly female Bigfoot casually strolling across the forest and not really caring about the two people filming it. These true American cowboys film themselves riding on horseback until Bigfoot appears in the most nonchalant fashion I've ever seen a cryptid act to this day, and is gone for good. I find it fascinating how little of the Sasquatch was able to be captured. Of course there are more recordings after 1967, but their validity has always remained dubious. I'd also like to note that in a lot of subsequent Bigfoot sightings and evidence, the creature mostly seems to have a reddish-brown coat, very different from the pure black we saw in the Patterson-Gimlin film. If Bigfoot turns out to be a real great ape, then it would be an absolutely major discovery in science, because we literally have zero evidence for any bipedal primate existing at the same time as us. Especially in North America. Humans have been the only primate in North America for millions of years. There used to be different variants of humans that went extinct like the Neanderthals, but a non-human variant of a bipedal ape or chimp? You genuinely have to go back millions of years, and even then, there's a huge controversy in science when it comes to classifying bipedal locomotion in monkeys, chimps, and apes. I thought I would just get a straightforward answer when looking up which funny monkey could do the hood irony meme, but it's so much more complicated than that. If we get into semi-bipedal, and being able to walk in short bursts, I was going a little insane over this, but I digress. My point is, humans have been the only primates with bipedal locomotion for a long time now, and there is zero scientific evidence to support the existence of another bipedal primate coexisting to this day in North America. No fossils, no fossilized footprints, no regular footprints, not even a stool sample. Absolutely nothing has been found that could even suggest the possibility of such a large primate in North America ever existing. That's why I personally believe if Bigfoot is real, it's unlikely to be an actual primate like us. I think it would have to be something entirely different. So the notion that Bigfoot is a paranormal entity or spirit that is roaming around the woods of North America is much more plausible than a species of great ape being completely undetected. If it really is a fourth dimensional being that just so happens to take the shape of a bipedal gorilla in the 3D world, it would explain why it's so extremely elusive and hard to capture on film. The interdimensional Bigfoot theory is real, by the way. I didn't just make it up. It actually states that this creature has superpowers like teleportation or invisibility at will, and it resides in an entirely different realm to us humans. Basically just a more sci-fi version of the spirit world. Remember, the native folklore indicates the existence of such a being, but keep in mind that a lot of Native American lore goes into the spirit world, so they could be telling the truth. It's just that the nature of Bigfoot is not that of a known biological creature. This would also explain why the sightings of Bigfoot differ so wildly. Some report them as intelligent human-like creatures with families, and their own small societies hidden away from humans, while others report them to be these wild beasts that could tear you from limb to limb. From teleporting troll to a forest spirit, what is real is the impact that Bigfoot has had on people. There are entire shows dedicated to catching Bigfoot, or cryptid-related shows like Mountain Monsters. Side note, it's absolutely bonkers. They're power-scaling different cryptids on there like they're Pokemon. Nevertheless, the sightings and stories have entertained and fascinated us through millennia. I'd go so far as to say Bigfoot perfectly captures the spirit of cryptids, an elusive, paranormal creature that defies our current understanding, just strolling in front of us like it's no big deal, challenging us to think outside of our defined box of reality. And on that note, thank you so much for watching my Halloween special. My other videos are very different from this one, but I just wanted to have some fun with the holiday. I have a Discord server linked below if you want to join, and a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys are the GOATs, so don't let the Hat Man in your home, and have a good time. Bye bye.